Hi there, Mr. Lithgow. How are you?
Good, good. Thank you for
Judy
pronouncing
Shields.
my name right.
Yes.
So,
Judy Shields from the Hollywood Times, and I'm
yeah,
honored to be here with you today.
thank you, Judy.
You mentioned as a teenager you enjoyed art. What was the first type of art you did?
Just drawing and painting and printmaking. And it started very early. I can't even remember when it started. I had wonderful parents who in this area really did encourage me. My mom always had sure that was always sure that I had really great art supplies. Uh, when occasionally I was in a school that did not have good art education, she lined it up somewhere. My last couple of years, I went to a very, very good high school, the Princeton High School in Princeton, New Jersey, but it did not have an art class. I mean, it did not have a good art class. So she got me into the Art Students League in New York on Saturday mornings, and I traveled into town at age 15 on the Trailways bus to take 3 solid hours of first figure drawing and then watercolor with serious. I had a wonderful teacher there named Ethel Katz, and I was with young artists. I mean, I'm sure they all ended up being New York school practicing artists, successful artists. I took an off ramp and became an actor. Big mistake. That was a joke.
Yes. First off, I wanted to thank John for sharing the amazing Art Happens Here show with us all. We all need art in our schools and in life. The ending was stunning. With that said, what can viewers of the show do to help keep arts in school and our communities?
Well, whatever a citizen can do to make things happen. A remarkable thing happened in the course of Art Happens Here. And I'm proud to say our reports from the Arts Commission of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences were a big part of their campaign. Something called Proposition 28 in California, which was an electoral referendum, a ballot initiative created by Austin Butner, who was a former superintendent of the LA Unified School District, which proposed that a certain percentage of the huge California public education budget be set aside for arts, to pay art teachers more, to find far more art teachers, and to create more arts in the classroom. Prop 28 passed overwhelmingly, like 65%. So in an election year that was extremely polarized, nothing was bipartisan. Suddenly, here was this huge bipartisan victory. And what it told me was everyone is concerned about our children. Our children are in real trouble. And this, they were in trouble before the pandemic, and they're in terrible trouble now. And education is the key. We have to pay teachers more. We have to find more teachers. We certainly have to find more art teachers because we've been losing them at a great rate for many, many years. So, what can you do about that? Well, make yourself known. What can you do about anything? This was a big ballot initiative, and voters showed up and they approved this, and they were extremely proud of themselves for having done it. So that's what you can do. Think about the children.
You seemed a bit nervous singing in front of Mrs. B. Did that make you feel like the first time you auditioned for an acting role?
Yeah. Listen, it never leaves you. I mean, the first day of any acting project, I've done a lot of acting in my life, and I've received a lot of recognition and acclaim for it. Doesn't matter. When you open your mouth and you speak your first line in the first table read of a new job, you're terribly nervous. You got all eyes on you. It never stops. Uh, and that was it was I wanted to express that to these kids too. They are already ahead of me in all these areas. Isn't it wonderful? You see them coaching me because they have such confidence. The most wonderful moment, in my opinion, in my experience, among many, many delightful moments, was when I had my little ceramics class with this young woman, Rosie, at a certain point, I asked her, Rosie, have you ever taught anybody anything? And she said, no, never have. I said, you are a natural teacher. I don't know whether you want to be a teacher, but you've discovered a real talent that you have because you've just taught me something that I never thought I could learn. And this to be able to capture that in a documentary, I think it really meant something to her too. She wrote me a letter about 3 or 4 weeks after we shot this.
Oh. I wanted to ask you, where do you keep the ceramic piece you made?
It sits right on. How sweet of you to ask. It's never far from my eyesight, from my field of vision in my office. It's not very useful. It's got a hole in the bottom of it. So I guess I imagined it as a planter where the holes where it would have to the water would have to drain through. So I don't use it for anything other than self-aggrandizement.
John was asked what he wanted people to take away from the show.
I am an entertainer, so of course I want them to enjoy it. I want them to be entertained by it, but I do want to just remind them how important arts in education is. It is a piece of strenuous advocacy, along with showing people a lot of delightful young people and 4 brilliant teachers. It's just a passion of mine. I think American education in general has been in dire straits, even before the pandemic came along and robbed millions of kids of 2 years of social development and in-person education. But one of the things that I think has been very deleterious is the slow diminution of arts in the classroom for kids. I speak very much from my own experience. When I was a kid, before I decided to be an actor, I wanted to be an artist. And a lot of that was pure inspiration from great art teachers in the public schools. I myself was a theater kid, moved around a lot. I didn't want to be an actor. I was much more interested in being an artist. I didn't want to go into the family business. And I went to about 6 or 8 different public schools. And in my most formative years, I had the very best arts education. This was in 9th and 10th grade in Akron, Ohio, of all places. My 2 teachers in those 2 years, a woman named Jean Thomas and a woman named Fran Robinson, they were unquestionably the best, most inspiring teachers I had in all my secondary education. Not just in visual art, but they made me into a better student. I'm absolutely convinced of that. I've been involved in research on this subject because I co-chaired a committee on the arts of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. And in the course of 3 years of research that wrapped up 3 years ago, we found out an enormous amount of just evidence, pure, hard evidence on what effect arts in education does for young people in schools. It makes them better students, but it also makes them much more eager to get to school. And nothing can help with the terrible challenges of inequality more than arts in education, because it's in arts classrooms, music, dance, theater, and studio art, that young people really discover who they are. It was certainly my case. I'm just sort of blabbing away on the subject here, but you asked a very simple and short question. What do I hope people take away from this? I hope they take away a better sense of how important and, in my opinion, how essential it is to give young kids the inspiration and education and discipline of the creative arts.
John was asked, how did he pick out the 4 different schools, and was it important to stay in California?
Yes, the germ of this idea came out of the Academy's Arts Commission. And at every point, I was advocating for somehow or other getting what we were doing out to the public, trying to use other media. PBS, of course, was the natural place to go because PBS is the best reporting on cultural issues in the U.S. I'm from California, so of course one of our members was a remarkable woman named Louise Bryson, one of our commissioners. She introduced me to Juan Davis and Perry Simon, and they became my co-producers for this project. Juan himself, he's won so many Emmy Awards, you could play checkers with them. He knew the arts community of Los Angeles inside out, including the school communities. So bit by bit, we refined the concept. I pitched to them the idea of me going back to school, being the new kid in class, being the backward student, and having the other very bright young students bring me along in the company of a brilliant art teacher. To be the new kid, have the teachers teach the kids and the kids teach me. That was the heart of our pitch. And then Juan went to work determining the best institutions to go to. And Perry and I talked about the best arts to involve ourselves in. Juan knew all about La Cañada Flint Ridge Ceramic Studio, self-help graphics in downtown, in East Los Angeles, LACSA, the LA County High School of the Arts, and Debbie Allen's Great Dance Academy. We picked those four just because we were trying to pick four areas of the arts in which I was not expert. I would be an enthusiast, but inexpert. And it all worked out just beautifully. The other thing we sort of counted on was that the students we were talking to would produce their own stars. We looked to find the right alpha student or groups of students who would be my particular tutors. So I would have one class with the entire class, and then I would return and have another one-on-one tutorial with one of these young kids. And so we had these marvelous kids, Yoli and Rosie, and the four wonderful young people who taught me vocal jazz singing, and this remarkable young dancer named Estrella. They became my two teachers, along with Ms. Marshall, Ms. Bass, Dewey, the silkscreen teacher, Azaz, the ceramicist. That's how it all happened. And the most vibrant space, not just for young people, but for the whole community. Another thing that was exciting about our show was going to these different parts of Los Angeles and seeing where these incredible things were going on that I never knew about.
John was asked if he had a favorite school of the four he visited.
Oh, it's very hard to pick a favorite. I really and truly did enjoy them all so much. The dance was by far the most strenuous. I mean, I was 77 years old at the time. And I mean, it almost killed me. There were moments in that dance class where I genuinely thought, oh my God, I'm going to have a heart attack, and collapsed with documentary cameras covering the whole event. I mean, it was exhausting, and yet it was exhilarating. And you asked the question in a way that just delighted me. That was the idea. I was supposed to be bad at these things. As an actor, I'm very accomplished. Yeah, as an artist, I'm an excellent hobbyist, but ceramicist and singer, these are way out of my comfort zone. And that was the entire idea. Let this big old man, let's capture him in a moment of terrible insecurity and watch him bit by bit achieve something, and capture that feeling of elation when you actually do it. Now, a lot of this I was slightly dramatizing. I'm not quite as bad a singer as I presented myself. I mean, I've even won a Tony Award for Best Actor in a Musical, but I didn't tell them that.
John was asked if he was planning any actual political activity or testimony at the state and federal levels.
Yeah, we're constantly figuring out how we can make this an agenda item for policymakers. it's something that I went through in the 3 years of that Arts Commission. We spoke to the heads of the Arts Caucus in the House of Representatives, things like that. At every point, Deborah Rutter was one of my co-chairs on the commission. She's the president of the Kennedy Center, right in Washington, in the belly of the beast. And she's constantly trying to get people's attention. She's also been very, very good on the whole subject of arts for young people. So the answer to that, the brief answer to that is yes, indeed. We want to affect policy.
John was asked, why is joy so vital in arts?
Well, I would say you just added joy has to be a part of our arts education. Joy has to be a part of our education. Kids have to go to school, for one thing. We have a huge crisis of absenteeism since the pandemic. I'm sure most of you read the New York Times article a week ago. It's a catastrophe. Kids don't feel the essential need to go to school every day. Arts education and sports make you want to go to school. Sports, I would say, is a comparison not to be neglected. I mean, athletic kids who are really good at sports, they show up for school. They are proud of their school. They fight for their school on the football field. Well, there's a wonderful thing that happens in LA once a year. I used to host it quite frequently, called the Spotlight Awards, which was a performing arts competition among greater LA, or I think even Southern California schools. And they would have this award ceremony at the Dorothy Chan Pavilion, and kids from all over greater Los Angeles would come and root for their performing artists. And they would cheer and they would yell and they were rivals with other schools and they were competitive and they were passionate. The whole event was so joyful. And in my career, I've run into 6 or 7 young kids who have won those Spotlight Awards and become professionals. I'm not advocating for more professional kids coming out of public education, but I think it's very important that more kids have the experience of creative discovery and be taught the joys of a creative life. That's my passionate area of advocacy. Well, I prize my Ohio background and all I lived in 4 different towns in Ohio and went to 6 different schools there. So you can imagine I owe a lot to Ohio.
Yeah.
No, I mean, that's the other thing. The overall idea of Art Happens Here is to, leave yourself open for brand new adventures. Take yourself out of your comfort zone regularly, your entire life. Try other things. Now, I'm an actor, which means I have to go from job to job, and it never leaves you the fear that you'll never be hired again. And I think a lot of that has to do with my kind of polymathic enthusiasms. I always cook something up for myself just in case nobody wants me. And that's why I've ended up dancing with the New York City Ballet and performing with symphony orchestras all over the country for children and writing kids' books and writing books of satirical verse. I've just always been ready to take on challenges that I don't really think I'm capable of achieving.
John was asked if he had any kind of informative experiences in or around libraries.
Well, yeah, of course, I remember so vividly the feeling of walking into the library in Yellow Springs, Ohio. I've never been a good reader. Actually, I was never a very good student. I was a very good student in terms of getting good grades, but I always put that down to being a good actor. But a library is a meditative place. It's a place of discovery. Librarians are just superb people. When I was writing my poetry books, I was also working at the same time on a TV series, The Old Man. And I had to find every moment I could to just scribble couplets and think of rhymes. And I was released early in the afternoon one day unexpectedly, and I was way up in North Hollywood. So I decided to just find the North Hollywood branch of the LA Library. And I went in there and I just sat there, and I sat there for 2 hours working on one of my poems. That was about 3 years ago. Well, there was a big campaign underway to raise money for the libraries. And they mentioned the fact that I was seen in the North Hollywood Library. And I thought, oh my God, it was that rare. So I think libraries are a very important part of the sort of lymphatic system of every community. Andrew Carnegie knew all about that. I'll recommend a book, which is Susan Orlean's The Library Book. Perfectly wonderful book.